Hi guys, I'm Blair. Welcome to Tactical Review. Today's video is actually one I wasn't going to do. What I'm going to be doing today is painting my home defense gun. And I wasn't going to do this video because, well, everybody's done a how to paint your gun video. Christopher Bondi over at Regular Guy Training, old flannel daddy himself, Grand Thumb, he's done an AR-15 video. In fact, he may have done a couple of those. I know he did one where he separated the upper and lower. And he did an FN scar because everybody can paint a $35+ weapon, you know, whatever. Over at Iraq Veteran 8888, Eric has done, he did an aluminide job on, I think it was an AK. I just wasn't going to put yet another how to paint your gun video up on YouTube. But a couple of weeks ago, I got my magazines done. I was practicing. My goal was, well, let me finish this thought. That's what I'm going to do. And when I posted a picture of my digital urban dark multicam magazines, I had a lot of people ask me to do a video showing how it's done. Now, if you're not a video guy, a lot of times I'm just give me step-by-step instructions and I'll figure it out. I will have a link to the Imgur album where I went through step-by-step on how I did the magazines. And if you're not sure about painting your gun, I'd suggest start with the magazine. Or, something else I did, head over to Walmart and pick yourself up a $10 foam dart gun. It doesn't look like an AR-15. Alright, if you look at this and you think that it looks like an AR-15, you're probably going to come and try to take my guns. But this does give me a vaguely gun-shaped item on which I could practice. And you can see here, this was more of a traditional multicam. This side I added in some mesh with a laundry bag, and that's a really cool effect. And this is, you can see here, more of the traditional multicam. Sorry about drifting in and out. I've got to think backwards for the camera here. And that was my plan. I like the looks of the digital camouflage. But you can see here, I'll get in closer to the camera in case, you know, I'm looking at this little bitty square preview screen, and it's going to be way different on your computer screen or your TV. But there's all these little right angles, and that's, you've seen Digicam. I don't know why I'm doing that. I had no desire to lay out sheets of masking tape, that's what I'm looking for, and cut all those little squares myself. I happen though to find on eBay, and I will have a link to it, I found a seller who was selling masking for the Digicam. And I said, well, that can make my goal for Digicam a reality. So I picked up, I think that this big envelope of stuff here, I paid around $15 for it. I'll give you a link to the guy's eBay store. I had a shipping label printed almost immediately, and I think it might have taken me a week to get there. There's some folks who complained about the adhesiveness of the layers or of the masking. I've had zero problems doing 4 magazines so far. Today's probably going to be the exception based on the fact that A, I'm filming, B, it's so humid that my sweat is sweating. So yeah, we're going to get into this. We're going to see how it goes. This won't be done in a 1-to-1 ratio because by the time I did all the little masking on the magazines, my magazines took me between an hour and a half and 2 hours. Just to get where they're dry enough to handle. So we'll have some movie magic in here, doing some kind of time lapse on this. But let's get going. So the first thing we've got to do is you need to mask all of the things that you don't want paint on, okay? Optic lenses, camera lenses, down your muzzle. I have optioned to not paint my trigger. Get in here a little bit closer, you can see I've got my magnification markings that I want to have access to later, my brightness markings for my illuminated reticle. Underneath there, it looks like you can see it. I covered the serial number for my optic, just in case I ever have to do a warranty claim. Same thing with my flashlight. I don't know if Streamlight would ever need that, but I want to have access to it if I need it. So anyway, make sure you get your masking done. I am not masking magazine well. I'm going to paint it with magazine in it, empty magazine. Empty chamber for, you know, if you're wanting to worry about that. Alright, because I will be flagging myself in the camera frequently here. So yeah, get the masking done. I did that off camera because it was a pain and didn't want to have to mess with that. Dust cover closed. I'm not doing any extra masking. And then, so we're going to get started. I'm going to soak a rag here with some rubbing alcohol, and we're going to do a light degreasing on the outside of this, make sure there's no dust of any kind sitting on it, and away we go. Oh, hey, I'm sitting here staring right at this big blue flag. I also masked off my front sight. Now, in this case, if I ever need my backup optics, I don't have a quick disconnect yet. That's on the list to get. So I'm still prepped with backup irons, but you can see right now they're kind of worthless. This one's not coming up. I've got them on there. I'm not painting around the front optic or the front blade because you want to be able to see it when you're behind the gun. So anyway, all right. Let's start off here. Handy dandy shop towels. Shop rags. Let's get this guy out of the way. We're going to set our camo masking aside for now. Don't want to paint it until it's time to paint it. Just some good old simple rubbing alcohol. Just going to give it a quick wipe down here. This gun's not dripping wet. It's a relatively new firearm, as a matter of fact. I've had it to the range just one time to test functionality, and hey, look at that, I've already knocked off a whole bunch of masking. That's just an indication of how this whole project's going to go, guys, I think. That being the case, I might just do myself an entire strip of tape around my magnification levels on my optic, just so that I know that I've got that. Alright, I got a mess down in here around the handguard. I just resecured it with some red Loctite on the barrel nut and blue Loctite on the actual screws. So yeah, messy. Towel off there. Alright, got her wiped down. I don't think I have any more gun oil hanging out here on the outside. If I do, I'm just going to have some weird spots in my camo, and that would really almost be desirable on a standard couple color camouflage with some local foliage to break up the pattern, and I might do a gun that way. I probably won't do a video on that. Yeah, once again, we've got a lot of good content out there for that. So, no need to reinvent the wheel. Alright, looks like our rubbing alcohol has had an opportunity to flash off though. So, first thing I'm going to do is tell you guys about the paint that I'm using. Well, and I'm going to grab my glove here on my off spray hand. So, I am doing an urban dark camo. So my colors are grays and blacks, and not much black, not as much as you'd think. It's honestly, black is not a natural night color. So if something is super black, it's going to draw your eye. So what I'm using though is just basic Rust-Oleum primer. I've got a light primer, a light gray. I have a medium gray primer. I do have some black primer. And I'm hoping that I've got enough because, well, again, par for the course. And then for my dark gray, I was not able to find a primer in between medium gray and black. So what I found instead, because obviously your main goal is for your paint to be matte. The one place that I wasn't able to find a matte paint is where I've labeled my magazines 300 black. That is a gloss. It was the only red that I could find at the time, and I definitely wanted to be able to quickly identify my magazines. As a matter of fact, that's a big part of the cause for this project. I'm a big fan of the traditional black rifle. But if you've never seen what happens when you feed a 300 blackout to a 5.56 gun, I'd recommend, there's videos for it. I'm not going to link any. Somebody sent me one on Facebook, and it's incredible. And I don't have a 223 5.56 here with me, but what will happen is of course your shoulders on your 5.56 round are up here about where the 308 pill that's in your 300 blackout starts to taper towards the nose itself. So what will happen is that your 300 blackout round will fake headspace in a 5.56, allowing the bolt to go into battery and allowing you to drop the hammer. And obviously though, a 308 thousandths round will not go through a bore that's only 223 thousandths of an inch. And so it'll make a good go of it. I think it'll swedge out to 6 or 8 inches, and then the back pressure will blow up your chamber. So, goal of this paint job is so that my magazines match my gun. Very easy, right at a glance, that's the right magazine and the right gun. Hopefully I've been smart enough to put the right bullets in the right magazine. That's neither here nor there. Anyhow, this is also the house gun, the home defense gun. It is chambered in a cartridge that's legal to hunt with in Indiana, and even with this short little 7.5 inch barrel, I'm going to give that a go later this year, I think. But an urban night motif is just really appropriate for this guy, so that's where I'm going with it. And I've chased a rabbit. Don't remember how I got there. We were talking about matte paint. That's what it is. I could not find a charcoal colored primer. I was looking for matte though, and I found this Rust-Oleum chalked, and I like how it looks. It does not come with, it doesn't turn out with a chalkboard-like consistency. It is this darkest gray right here by my finger. So this will be our kind of our primary color. So where do we start, is might be what you're asking. And with a lot of paint jobs, it doesn't matter. We're going to do stripes, we're going to do whatever. But with the Digicam, we actually start with the color we want the least of. And then we use small masking and we build from there. So in my case, I want the least of my lightest gray. So we're going to lay down a complete coverage coat of this lightest gray over the whole gun. And I'm going to get behind the table. I know it's super exciting to watch somebody spray paint. And I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to make you guys watch this in one-to-one. I may have mentioned that already. In fact, I think I did. But this way you can at least kind of see it going on. And yeah, away we go. All right, well, she's getting a little low, but I think I've got enough to complete the project. What I have to do right now, though, is give this enough time that I can turn it over and spray the other side without marring this paint. Luckily, primer is a fairly fast drying type of paint, but I'm going to give it about 10 minutes or so, and I'll be back. Alright, we're back, and I'm going to turn the gun over and start working on the other side. Before I do, one thing I forgot to mention is don't forget to flip your safety selector and get underneath it, or you're going to end up with a shadow, and you'll need to do that every coat that we do, because I wouldn't recommend trying to make that, like, have your camo necessarily go over that. Put that in one of the sections that's a single color. Anyway, flip the gun over and we'll go again. Alright, well, yeah, it was a close thing, but you can see in the background, I got the entirety of the other side. We'll give it a few more minutes and start in on masking and our next. Okay, both sides of our base coat are dry. Feel like they're dry. If they're not, I'm going to have a sticky weapon with a bunch of smear marks on it. So, for our next step, we need to start masking off for our Digicam. Now, with a traditional multicam, this is super easy because it's just amorphous blobs everywhere. The Digicam, though, as you know, is a bunch of squared off edges. So we're going to use things like our receiver split and the straight edges here, like on the brace and the castle nut, parts of our optic mount as our cues. I'm not suggesting that you want your camouflage to stop at these locations, but rather that you're going to want to use those to align the pieces of your multicam stencils. Now, be smarter than me. I have neglected to bring with me a pair of tweezers. And so what that means is I'm going to have a double of a time. Okay, anyway, getting these little pieces to adhere to the weapon and not to my fingers. If you look here, I have 3 different sizes of masking. A small, a medium, and a large. And we are doing 4 layers of paint that have 3 layers of masking in between them. So obviously we're going to start with our small and then move to our medium and end with our large. And with the small, there's just not a lot of way to use the extra that's left over in between the layers of masking, or the cuts of the mask. When we get to the large, in fact, I might have some peeled off here from doing magazines. You know, you can kind of see here, see if I can get in close enough, that we've got our masking here that's cut all the way around. And then the pieces that are left over in between, we actually will very likely be able to cut as straight as possible with those and get a little bit more for our money. At very least, I'm frugal. Very often, I'm cheap. And that's kind of the point of this channel. So, anyhow, let's go through, start masking off. Again, remember, we want as little of this color left over as possible. Well, not as little as possible, just be spray it all and forget about it. But just like there's not a lot of true black in nature, these light colors, if you've got too much of it, small amounts are going to help create this disillusion of the outline of the weapon. Too much of that, though, is going to be a beacon in the dark. And again, the point of this urban dark multicam is so that my weapon has a little bit of camouflage if something comes and goes bump in the night. So anyway, I'm going to start doing some masking, and then immediately after that I'm going to go with my second color here. So what's going to take me quite a few minutes, well, you guys will get to watch it in fast forward. And before I get to the point where I fast forward things, I do want to remind you that the whole point of camouflage is breaking up our well, in this case, this gun-shaped pattern. So don't sabotage your camouflaging efforts by making a pattern with your camouflage. That's not the point. Okay, here we go. All right, that was time consuming. It won't have been nearly as long for you as it was for me. I'm sure I lost over an hour on that. I didn't start timing it. And I'm going to come around the table here, make sure we get a good view of this. So all of those darker spots that you can see are going to actually still be this light gray when we get all done. Now, once again, there will be light gray on it. You can see there's going to be plenty, but it will not be the predominant color. So, all right, it's that time again. I'm going to spray down this one side, and we're just going from not exactly lightest to darkest. These first three coats are going to be light to dark as we go with our next darker gray on this. But then we will finish up once again with that charcoal gray, just because that's a lot more natural nighttime color. Let's dust this guy off. A less lazy and more intelligent man would probably break out the air compressor and just blow this off. But I'm also afraid of blowing off some of this masking. It's sticking a lot better than I was afraid it would in this humidity. But you know, through this process, I've had quite a few of them wanted to stick to me, not to the weapon. And one last thing before I start spraying this next coat is if you have debilitating OCD, this will not be the paint job for you. You're not going to get these decal, stencils, masks, whatever you want to call them. You will not get them anywhere near as square as a factory, digitally printed Digicam. So if that's going to bother you, feel free to watch the rest of the video. But this won't be a paint job that you want to do for yourself. Alright, we'll be back in about 10 minutes or so to flip it over and do the other side of the gun. And we're back. Time to do the other side. well, that does it for our dark gray coat. Got to let this side dry and be back, and we'll start masking off so that we can do our black coat. Alright, we are dry enough to handle again, so I'm going to get started now masking off for my coat of black paint. For this one we're going to be using now the medium stencils. So the nice thing is that every layer really starts taking a little bit less time to stencil because you're working with bigger pieces. Now keep in mind that as you keep in mind a couple things. One, you'll see here maybe in the camera there are a couple of places that I can take nice offcuts that I can again get a little bit more bang for the buck with these larger cuts. But anyway, as you're putting these on, remember that you're going to be overlapping that first layer of stencils at times. Not necessarily always, not necessarily entirely every time, but if you don't overlap those lower levels of stencils, what you end up with is a bunch of little islands of these lower level colors floating in an ocean of the final color. And I know that there are camo patterns out there like that, but that's not the goal of this Digicam. So keep that in mind. I'm going to get this masked off and get ready to paint the next layer. Alright, I think I'm ready to spray the black now. And I'd like to go on record as saying quicker is not the same thing as quick. Obviously it still took me quite a bit of time. And these medium pieces of masking aren't running to stick as well. I think it's a combination of the fact that it's getting more humid as the evening wears on, combined with the fact that these larger pieces of masking are now going over a lot more complex shapes. So hopefully I can keep this all in place as I spray it. And we're doing the black. And in case you haven't watched any of the videos on this, don't try to shortcut and say, oh, anything I look black, I'll just mask off. The rifle or weapon is already black. You're going to want to paint it black for anything that you want to end up as black, just because this is going to be much more matte in finish than what the weapon is naturally. I think I have enough to finish this. We're going to give it 10 minutes or so to dry, and then we'll come back and spray that final side. Alright, well I forgot to restart the camera when I coated this other side, but you've watched me spray paint how many coats now, it's nothing special. Alright, what we're going to do here is, well, hey, it's back to being a black gun, look at that. We are going to throw on this last layer of stickies, and I got some spots that have stuck down. C'est la vie, right? It's a homemade paint job. It's not going to be perfect. And I'm rushing it a little bit. Ideally, you would actually give maybe even an hour in between coats, especially when it's humid outside like this. I'm not doing that. I'm trying to get through this. Number one, it's getting late, and number two, I want to get this video uploaded for you guys. Like I said, I had requests to see how this was done when I posted pictures of my magazines. So I'm going to go ahead and do this masking here for, and again, remember, what you mask every time is going to stay the color of the last coat. So I'm going to mask out so that I can save some black sections, and we'll get this charcoal gray down, and then I'm going to call it a night. It's yeah, like I said, going on 11 o'clock here, and then I'll unwrap it for you tomorrow. I should leave the camera roll for like overnight so that you guys have to go one-to-one with me. Just kidding, I wouldn't do that. I don't think you two would appreciate that. Alright, let's get some masking on here. Well, I think we're ready for our final coat of paint. If we're not, we can always say we should have been. Alright, well, I've got to get the other side, but I'm going to go ahead and turn off the camera, and well, when it comes back, we'll be unwrapping this, because again, you don't need to watch me spray the other side of the gun. So I'll see you in a few seconds. For me, I'll see you tomorrow. So, alright guys, it is right at 17 hours since we finished up that last coat of paint, and now it's time to start peeling off the masking. One thing I will tell you is that if you are going to do a paint job like this, find yourself a more ergonomical position to do it than what I was using last night. I was hunched over that table for quite a while, and my lumbar is screaming at me about it. So either sit down where you're masking it off, or have the weapon hanging. I know a lot of guys do that. Or a taller table would have been a good idea. Yeah, I'm sacrificing of myself for you guys. So anyway, I'm going to start peeling off this masking, and it's just a matter of find where it's loose and take your time, start working the pieces off. Those bottom layer pieces will probably be a little difficult to get. Just take your time, and it may be a good little while that you're still finding pieces and realizing that it's masking for the lower layer. So there's no sense in us doing this in one-to-one time. And I will speed this up for you guys so that you guys get to see the final result pretty quickly. And there we have it. Yeah, I've got to say, I learned a lot from this. For one thing, there are places such as the tape switch here and the actual tail of the SBA3 brace that they're more rubbery, and the paint did not really stick where the hoot on those. But all things considered, everything moves that needs to move. There's a couple of things that are a little stiff right now. They'll loosen up with wear. This top coat of paint still feels a little tacky, but I know that on those magazines that I did, that they felt tacky for a few days. I mean, obviously, this isn't something that you're gonna, paint it, peel it, and then go use the weapon that afternoon. All things considered, I'm fairly pleased with it. Do I think it turned out as well as the magazines I did? No, I don't. But I don't hate it, and probably that's the most critical thing. I mean, it's something I did myself. So if you're on the fence about rattle canning your weapon, well, like I said, start with a magazine, start with a dart gun, and see how you feel about it. Worst case scenario, you can always hit it with some Citrusol and a scour pad and take it back to nothing. You can spray over it. These magazines, heck, this one still has an old paint job. I've got to go back over it. And I think I've tried 4 or 5 different paint jobs on these. Now, there's places on the weapon that it won't really stand up for that. And keep in mind, the paint job is going to wear down. So, if the tedium of the Digicam paint job seems like a bit much, I mean, this is obviously, I started yesterday at about this time, wait until midnight, and I just spent an hour picking off this pile of masking right here. So don't let the tedium of this particular paint scheme frighten you off from trying to spray your weapon. If you're needing it to blend in a little bit more out in the foliage, that's a lot easier. You can pick 3 or 4 colors that kind of suit the color scheme of where you are. Some broad strokes up and down, because with the gun, your lines kind of go this way. So if you do some broad strokes this way, and then mask off with some local foliage, that's just a few coats of paint, maybe an hour of dry time before you can handle it, and then let it sit overnight before you really start handling it. So, well, that's all there is to this. Guys, if you stuck with me this long, I really appreciate it. If you're hoping to see more content, go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe, the little notification bell. I will try to get content up as often as possible. But if you'd like to see more content happen more frequently, you can help out. Got a link to my Patreon page down below. If you can help support the channel, these are a lot of this, things that I'm going to do for myself, that I want to give some reviews for you guys. But if you're able to help support the channel, you can make ammunition happen faster, possibly accessories happen faster, and that'll let videos keep happening with more frequency. Until next time, this is Tactical Review. I'm Blair. Shoot straight, stay safe.